Hey everyone! Today, we're challenging the history they sold us. Picture this: 4,600 years ago, under the scorching Giza sun. Pharaoh Khufu, ruler of the 4th dynasty, tells his chief architect, "I need a tomb that will stand forever, the tallest structure on the planet." And so the building of the Great Pyramid begins. It's a colossal machine, almost 150 meters high, made of 2.6 million stone blocks, each weighing an average of 2.5 tons. And do you know how long it took him? Just 26 years. Now, let's be real. They had no steel, no modern machinery, not even the wheel for mass transport. How the heck was this even possible? Faced with such an unthinkable task, humanity came up with 2 easy answers to avoid admitting its own genius. Slaves, a cruel pharaoh, whips, and exhausted captives. Aliens, only space technology could handle this job. I promise you, the real story hidden in the sands of Giza is far more fascinating. It's about politics, logistics, national pride, and stakes. Yeah, you heard that right. Stakes. Myth-busting. From Herodotus to Hollywood. The myth of the whip and slavery. Why is the slave myth so persistent? It all started with Herodotus in the 5th century BC. The Greek historian visited Egypt 2,000 years after the pyramids were built. Imagine writing a historical report based on rumors told to you by a local guide who heard them from his own grandfather. Herodotus wrote that 100,000 slaves were involved in the work. Then, of course, came the Book of Exodus, telling the story of the Israelites' enslavement in Egypt. Although the biblical texts don't mention them building the Giza Pyramids specifically, the images merged. And the one who finally cemented this lie was Hollywood. Films like The 10 Commandments, 1956, solidified the image of a despotic pharaoh and oppressed masses in our minds. This drama, folks, sells perfectly, but has little to do with the facts. The alien help theory, an insult to the ancients. The second theory, thriving on YouTube today, is ancient aliens. The argument is simple. The ancient Egyptians didn't have the right tools, so someone must have helped them. This is not a compliment. It's a veiled insult. Essentially, pseudo-archaeology often stems from an unwillingness to acknowledge the incredible achievements of non-Western cultures. It basically says, your ancestors were too primitive to pull this off. But here's a fact. Khufu's pyramid didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was the culmination of a long and costly evolution. Khufu's father, Sneferu, spent decades building several unsuccessful pyramids before they learned their lessons. Remember the bent pyramid, which had to be finished at a different angle because it started to collapse? Khufu and his architects simply took all those mistakes into account, and only after that did they build perfection. This wasn't lasers. It was science based on 100 years of experience. The archaeological revolution, where Khufu's friends lived. The real breakthrough that turned the myths to dust happened in the 1990s. Archaeologists, primarily doctors Zahi Hawass and Mark Lenner, discovered a massive workers' settlement, Hayt El Ghurab, the lost city of the builders, and right next to it, a workers' cemetery. Burials of honor and evidence of medicine. Forget about the nameless graves of slaves. What did we find here? Honored burials. The workers and their overseers were buried in modest but organized mastabas, just a few hundred meters from the sacred pyramid. In ancient Egypt, burial near the pharaoh was the highest honor. Slaves were expendable. They would have been discarded. These people were Egyptian citizens. Ancient medicine, the study of the skeletons found in the necropolis, over 600 of them, showed that the labor was incredibly hard. Many men died young, around 30 to 35 years old. But we discovered healed, complex fractures including those from falling stones, that had set correctly. In one case, a man who suffered a leg injury, possibly an amputation, lived for another 14 years after the surgery. This was a level of care available only to valuable employees. The state would not have invested in costly medical treatment for slaves who could simply be replaced. VIP dining and bureaucracy. The city of the builders wasn't just a camp. It was a massive, walled, planned settlement with administrative buildings and giant galleries that served as barracks. And now for the stakes. Analysis of animal bones found at the site showed that the workers regularly received high-quality meat, the best cuts of beef, as well as fish and poultry. This diet was essential to maintaining their physical fitness and refutes the model of slave labor. All this required an incredibly complex, centralized system of supply and accounting. We found evidence of this bureaucracy: titles of overseers, inspector of tomb builders, and most touchingly, graffiti. The workers, organized into teams, known as files, proudly left their team names in the service chambers: Friends of Khufu and Drunks of Menkaure. Do you think enslaved, beaten people would name themselves friends of their tormentor? Logistics. The secret, the papyri revealed. The true genius of Khufu and his vizier Hemiunu lay not in magic, but in logistics and national unity. Corvée. A duty, not captivity. If they weren't slaves, why were they working? They were seasonal farmers called up for labor duty. Corvée. See, ancient Egypt lived by the rhythm of the Nile. When the fields were flooded during the inundation, people were idle. The state utilized this surplus labor for its projects. It was an obligatory civic duty, a form of paying taxes with labor, which provided them with shelter, food, stakes, and the privilege of working for the god-king, the waterway to the construction site. Remember how Khufu got 2.6 million stones to the site? The answer is the Nile. Archaeological surveys confirmed that an ancient canal or arm of the Nile, the Libani, ran right up to the Giza Plateau, right next to the city of the builders. Without this waterway, which allowed barges to deliver massive cargo, limestone from Tura, granite from Aswan, construction would have been unthinkable. And here is our main piece of evidence, a 2013 discovery. The world's oldest papyri, the diary of an official named Merer, were found at the Red Sea in Wadi al-Jarf. These work logs are dated to the last year of Khufu's reign and detail how Merer and his 40 boatmen transported white casing limestone by water directly from Tura to Giza. These records are living proof of a flawless transport chain. How were the stones lifted? Again, no aliens, just engineering brilliance. Wet sand. The stones were moved on wooden sledges. Recent research confirmed that the builders poured water onto the sand in front of the sledges. This reduced friction, allowing enormous blocks to be dragged by far fewer people. Internal spiral. To lift the blocks upward, in addition to external ramps, they likely used an internal spiral ramp, proposed by architect Jean-Pierre Houdin. It ascended inside the structure at a 7-degree angle, which greatly simplified the lifting of heavy loads and concealed the construction, the pyramid that built Egypt. So what can we take away from this? The true hiding in ancient history isn't a lost artifact, but the systematic minimization of ancient Egypt's organizational genius. As Egyptologist Mark Lehner said, "I don't think about how the Egyptians built the pyramid. I think about how the pyramids built Egypt." The building of Khufu's pyramid was an ideological project. It united the country around a deified king, strengthening unity and the legitimacy of power. An economic engine, it created a complex bureaucracy, a national transport network, and a resource redistribution system that formed the foundation for the entire function of the Old Kingdom. The Giza Pyramids are a triumph of bureaucracy, logistics, faith, and human potential. They were built not by slaves, but by citizens who proudly called themselves Friends of Khufu and received the best medical care and high-quality nutrition for their labor. This, my friends, is the real, heroic, and incredibly human story. Thanks for doing this investigation with me. Subscribe, hit that like button, and I'll see you in the next video.